Hello everyone, it is Jack here with my weekly series of videos. This week we're going to play something a little bit different. I know we've been playing a lot of mid-range decks, but this week we're going to play a kind of lower to the ground deck, and kind of a tribal deck to be honest. We're going to be playing the white-black vampires deck that was in Grand Prix Memphis. Did very well there, definitely a rising archetype, I think, based on the games I've played against it on Magic Online. I did make a couple changes to the deck. I added a Twilight Prophet, and I messed with the sideboard a little bit. I added some Adonto Vanguards for black removal decks. Anyway, let's get into the deck. So we have removal in the form of 2 Fatal Pushes, and we're really relying on white for our removal in this deck. So we have 2 Thopter Arrests and 2 Ixalan's Bindings to deal with problematic cards like the Scarab God, Chandra, Hazaret. I mean, you get the picture. Now, most of this deck is vampire themed, token themed. One of the cards that stands out, if you're watching and you're wondering why I called it Vampires and Horses, is there are 3 Crested Sunmare at the top of our curve, which interact incredibly well with our lifelink tokens. Basically, when we have 5 mana, we attack with, our seemingly non-threatening 1/1 lifelink or 2/2 lifelink tokens, and then we play this, and at the end of the turn we get an indestructible 5/5, and it works on our opponent's turn too if we decide to block with a lifelink token. So yeah, that's a cool interaction at the top of our curve. If you get 2 Crested Sunmares out, they make each other indestructible. So that is problematic for our opponent to deal with if we're ever able to get 2 Crested Sunmares out. So kind of, that's a cute little interaction, but kind of what the deck wants to do is 2 things. Number 1, it wants to create tokens. So token producers, we have obviously Legion's Landing, creates a 1/1, and when it flips, it lets you create a 1/1 every turn if you want to. So yeah, create tokens there. In our 3-drop spot, we have 4 Queen's Commission, creates 2 1/1 vampires with lifelink, and Call to the Feast in our 4th spot that creates 3 1/1 vampire creature tokens with lifelink. So, kind of seems low to the ground, but when you add in some pump for the tokens, then it gets out of hand really fast. So to increase the power toughness of all of our tokens, we have 4 Legion Lieutenants, which give, since our tokens are vampires, all of them +1/+1, and we have 4 Radiant Destiny, which give, you play it, you name vampires, and all of your vampires get 1/1 enchantment, so it's really hard to remove. And finally, the last part of this is that it does have Ascend, and it is really easy to get the City's Blessing. So then our vampires not only get +1/+1, but they also have Vigilance and are able to freely attack. So going back to the Legion's Landing, a lot of times you're not creating a 1/1 token when you use the land's ability. You're creating, a 2/2 with Vigilance, or a 3/3, or a 4/4. You can get pretty out of hand pretty fast and just become a very efficient engine for the deck. So, to kind of supplement our vampire theme here, we have 3 Martyr of Dust, which is a great card. Usually leads to our opponent having to 2 for 1. They can Fatal Push this, but then we get a token with lifelink, which in some cases is, works out to be a 3/3. So this could be like a 4/3, they kill it, then we get a 3/3, and then they have to spend another removal spell on it. We have 4 Dusk Legion Zealot, which come into the battlefield. They draw a card. All of these are vampires. All of them are great. We also, in the 4 spot, have a single Twilight Prophet. I want to try it out. I think this deck will have no problem getting to Ascend, which means that we're drawing an extra card each turn, we're draining our opponent for life, and we're gaining life. So, yeah, that's the deck. We'll talk about the sideboard real quick. This should be fairly straightforward. Let's start with the obvious. We have 4 Duress, comes in against control, comes in against decks that are heavy with spells, kind of frees up the rest of our deck for other things. 2 Fragmentize. This card is really good, hits most of the artifacts and enchantments that you want it to hit in the format. It's obviously not going to hit a Gear Hulk, it's obviously not going to hit a Godpharaoh's Gift, but it hits Hidden Stockpile, hits Anointed Procession, hits Ixalan's Binding, hits Search for Azcanta, whatever you need it to hit, it will hit. We have an extra copy of Fatal Push to come in against other decks that are kind of low to the ground, kind of free up our attackers. We have 2 Profane Procession. This card is going to see a lot of play, especially if people find a way to, successfully fit white into their decks. You could read it as being an 8 mana removal spell, but it really is better than that, especially right now whenever you have things like Eternalize, Embalm, and the Scarab God in the format. If you exile a token, it doesn't count towards the condition on the card. So you could infinitely exile tokens and Profane Procession would never flip. It's so good against so many decks. The only problem is not a lot of decks are playing white and black together, so that's why it's not seeing a lot of play. But you heard it here first. I predict that it will see a ton of play soon because it's just very good. We have a copy of Vraska's Contempt to come in against higher on the curve cards that we need to deal with, like the Scarab God, Chandra, Glorybringer, whatever. A single copy of Lost Legacy. I honestly am ready to give up on this card. I think it's just not that good anymore, and there are better answers to cards. We're going to have it in our deck just in case we run into like a combo deck like Approach or, whatever. We're going to try 2 copies of the Immortal Sun. This is going to come in against control decks. The condition about Planeswalkers isn't really relevant right now. I mean, I guess it's okay against Chandra, but it's a 6 mana card, and Chandra's probably already been down for 2 turns by now. We're more interested in the other conditions, which are we get to draw an extra card on our draw step, our spells cost 1 less, and once again, it pumps our creatures. So we'll try 2 copies of that. I don't know how good it'll be, but we'll find out. And finally, we have 2 of Adanto Vanguard, which, as I mentioned before, are for black-based removal decks, or even red removal decks. Red decks with removal is what I mean to say. We can pay 4 life and continue to keep it on the battlefield. Plus, I mean, it's a good aggressive card. For 2 mana, you're attacking for 3 each turn. And then you combine that with something like Radiant Destiny or Legion's Lieutenant, and yeah, I mean, that's the deck. It's pretty straightforward. I'll be interested to see how it plays out in the leagues. I'm not really familiar with decks like this in terms of playing them, so it'll be a learning experience for me. I hope you enjoyed the deck tech. Be sure to check out the games in the league that we play. I hope you enjoy it, and as always, I'll see you next week.